All right, guys. Hello, everybody.
Hello, and Alex, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Really excited about this today.
Hey, we are too.
We are too. We are as well.
We've been looking forward to this. And so while we're waiting on everybody to kind of come in and join us today, just wanted to welcome everybody, tell you, where we are today.
Mhm.
We are just outside of Atlanta. We are about 45 minutes outside of Atlanta, and it is the most gloriously sunny day here you have ever seen. It's beautiful. And Alex, where are you, dear?
I am in Jacksonville, Florida, home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are an incredible football team that have won games before. And anyway, I'm here pretty close to the ocean. I love the beach. I love this town. It's really a pretty chill place. But yeah, Jacksonville, Florida is my home, and I'm happy to be coming from here today.
We're happy to have you. And hey, we just happen to be in the home of the Atlanta Braves.
That is true.
Right. Congratulations.
World Series champions.
Thank you.
Yep. So we're going to get started here in just a second, guys. But while you are coming in, hey, shoot us some comments. Let us know where you're coming from. And if you have any questions about personal branding or podcasting today, pop it in the comments and we will do our very best to answer them live today. And if we don't answer them live, we will come back to you right after the broadcast and hit you up in those comments and make sure we get to every single one of you. We're happy to have you here.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's not tarry any longer, gentlemen. Shall we?
Let's do it.
All right.
Come on.
All right. So we have a presentation prepared for you today. Hang on one second. Let me go back.
It looked like your last slide. Yeah, you start with the first slide usually.
We're starting at the back end of it. Here we go.
That's right.
Technological difficulties. You know what we call that? We call that a picnic around here. It's a problem in the chair. Not in the computer.
Not in the computer.
Okay.
Not in the chair, not in a computer. Okay. Yeah. And it just happens to be I'm the problem. Okay. So I want to introduce our topic today. We're going to be talking about personal branding and powerful connections for podcasters. Well, guys, you know that podcasting has risen tremendously. And the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you become a podcaster, in order to become an authority or an expert in your industry, you've got to have your stuff together, right? In a lot of different ways. And that's what we're here to talk to you guys about today.
Absolutely. So let's give you some stats to start things off with. There's 120 million podcast listeners just in the last year. There's over 2 million podcasts in the world right now. And I remember when we first started talking about podcasting, I think it hadn't even cleared 1 million yet. So it's coming on just like this, guys. So podcast is becoming a very good, viable option to reach your ideal customers and to reach your to get your advertising out there. It's also it's a really good way for you to portray a lot of things that you've got on your mind that you want to share with other people. And before we get started with this, I think it's a good idea if we introduce ourselves.
Let's do it.
Let's do that.
All right.
Let the lady go first.
Well, okay, I'll go first. All right, let's do it. So my humble beginnings were selling vacuum cleaners door to door. I did that to pay my way through college. And as I was doing that, that's where I got my first taste of personal branding. I realized you just can't go up to somebody's door and ask them for a wallet in exchange for a vacuum cleaner. Didn't work that way. So
she no doubt tried that.
You bet I did. So not long after that, I went into the media world, started my foray in media and radio. And that's really where I understood how much of an impact personal branding has in business, because so many of the people that I worked with were like stars in their industry. And I noticed a lot of those business owners had the same things in common. They were the face and the voice of their own business. So fast forward 23 years later, I'm working with people of all different industries to help them become a better face of their business and brand. I founded the company called BrandFace, where we do personal branding to help business stars differentiate themselves. It was that time frame that I met this gentleman, and I'll let him pick up from there.
Yeah, my background's in entrepreneurship. I was a trained auctioneer That was my first love and craft. It still is something that's a very big part of my life. And then real estate. I enjoyed real estate. Mostly was a regional auctioneer back when I first got started. Became a nationally known auctioneer. I became licensed in 31 states. I've been actively involved in over 78,000 real estate transactions. The reason this matters is I came back to my small hometown. I opened up a brokerage, and I was just trying to build that just traditionally, just like any other business. And I met this lady right here, and she began to use the BrandFace principles to help me become the face of my business in the local town that I was trying to build that business in. And it was astronomical, the difference that it made in my business by doing that. We started off with a traditional brokerage. We had one transaction, I think, in 2013, and now we sell more properties in a day than we used to sell in a month. We've got 3 locations in Knoxville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, and Oviedo, Florida, and 30 of the greatest agents that you've ever met, a 43-state network that we do real estate with. And it's all because of the BrandFace principles that we're going to talk to you today that work in any industry that you want it to work in. Today, specifically, we're talking about podcasting because, as I said earlier, we've got over 2 million podcasts and growing. We're going to talk a lot more of that with the actual expert that I'm going to introduce to you here in just a minute. And there's over 120 million listeners to podcasts this year alone. So if you're a podcaster interested in standing out, you've got to get branded. That's what it boils down to. All right. And a man in the podcast industry nowadays, it probably doesn't need any introduction, but is our good friend, Alex Sanfilippo. So Alex, you want to tell him a little bit about you and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much. And every time I hear the two of yours experience, I always feel like I need to fabricate more into mine. I'm not going to do that, but I feel like I need to add to it and make it something a little sexier. I don't know, because you all have got just crazy experience. But anyway, it's an honor to be here. So as Michael just mentioned, my name is Alex Sanfilippo, and I've been in podcasting for years now. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember that there was less than 500,000 total podcasts. So when my podcast reached a top 20 in one of the categories and top 100 of all podcasts at certain periods, it wasn't as big of a deal as if you can do that now, right? Obviously the game has changed quite a bit, but I'm thankful to have grown in the podcasting space. I run podcasting software companies, and I'm full-time in this, and we'll probably get into some of that here today. But that's just a little bit about me. Really, I'm a passionate podcaster. I love sharing about entrepreneurship, helping other people break away from their 9-to-5 traditional job and move into the full-time entrepreneurial space that they want to be in. And that is just something that I am passionate about, and I try to do that through podcasting as much as I possibly can.
Well, I want to.
That's awesome.
I want to say one more thing about this. The reason we're here together today is what we call a 1-2 punch, guys. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be a podcaster, you obviously want to present yourself as an authority in your industry and compelling and with something to say and something to offer. But before you begin that journey, you need to know what it is you have to say, what it is you have to offer, and dial that in, and that's called your brand. So it's the 1-2 punch today, and we hope you leave here with so much information that you can get started right away. All right, guys. So let's
get into the meat.
Let's keep rolling. So this is our part of the presentation. So we're just going to roll right into it and teach you guys a little bit here about personal branding. So how a powerful personal brand can attract ideal guests and an ideal audience. Think about that. As a podcaster, those are 2 things that you need. You can't possibly appeal to everyone. It's in our nature to want to do that. But the more you niche down and figure out who it is exactly you want to reach and who it is exactly you want to be on your show, well, you've got some work to do, right? So that's where we're going to start.
Yep. Okay. So some more stats. I always end up on the stat slides. Okay. 50% of all U.S. homes are podcast fans. 55% of the U.S. population has listened to a podcast, and 24% listen to podcasts weekly. And that equates to roughly 68 million listeners weekly, folks, from all kinds of subjects. Alex can tell us a whole lot more about that, and is going to. It's just a wide range of a plethora, if you will, of any subject matter that you can portray and get an audience for. But just as that is growing, folks, and just like Alex said earlier, to reach those top echelons, to reach those hallmarks of listenership, it's becoming harder and harder and harder, because more people are coming into it, right? So you've got to rise above the fray. And to be able to do that, you really need to brand yourself, okay? And you need to stand out with that.
So the challenge, it's just what Michael just said. How do you stand out when there are so many? See, we show you those stats not to show you the opportunities, but to also show you some of the challenge, right? Mm-hmm. It's how do you stand out as a podcaster? Because I was looking today, and we brand podcasters, and I was looking for potential names to go along with his brand identifier or his brand. And literally I realized that so many names are already taken, right? So that forces you to be even more creative. So you've got to jump in now and figure out that brand and head in the right direction now before your name is not even available, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how important it is.
Yep, we're going to talk to you today on the branding side about what we call the 3D freedom formula. Now, keep in mind, we use this across every kind of genre of business known to man, okay? And we do it in 43 states in the United States. We do it in 6 different countries, okay? These principles that we're going to teach you are exactly what works in any industry you're in, especially in podcasting, okay? Let's get into the meat of the 3D freedom formula.
Okay, so the first thing we do when we work with clients is we look at defining who they are and why they do what they do. So in that define phase, we're really looking at 3 different things. Number 1, you need to know who your ideal customers are. And as a podcaster, you need to know, first of all, who is going to be in your audience? Who are you trying to teach something to? Who are you trying to attract? And then you need an ideal guest profile, right? So you need to know who are those guests that you're going to be bringing in to make sure that you have the right content that's going to help you attract more of your potential customers, which is why you're doing the podcast in the first place. So we take a look at who those ideal customers are. And if you guys will hit us up in the comments, we will share with you the very exclusive formula that we use for ideal customers. It's super simple, but we're the only ones in the world that have it. So I promise, hit me up in the comments and we'll share it with you. So we got to learn about that. Second thing we do in the define phase is we take a look at what are those things that set you apart. As human beings, if somebody says to you, what's the number 1 thing that sets you apart from everybody else? You're going to really scratch your head trying to figure out what that is. Do you know why you do that? Because you have many points of differentiation, many things that are special and unique about you. So it's that formula that we look at and say, okay, but which of those things about you that are so special and important and different also appeal to the people that you're trying to attract in your business and your life? And so it's that formula that we look at in the define phase and helping you figure out what that is. Also in the define phase, one last thing, we come up with what we call a brand identifier to kind of set the tone and direction for your brand. So let's talk about what that means. A brand identifier is really just a tagline or a slogan, and it kind of says who you are or what you stand for. Here's the reason we do that. If you think for a moment about your brand being like a book, well, your brand is your story, and it is like a book, but you can't possibly put the entire contents of the book on the cover. No one would read it, nor could they. So what you're looking for is a book title, if you will. You're looking for that 75-mile-an-hour view of who you are and what you stand for, boom, that stops your audience instantly and gets them to at least say, that looks interesting. Let me learn more. Let me crack open the first page of the book. So to sum that up, in the define phase, we're looking at your ideal customers, both from an audience and a guest standpoint. We're looking at those things that set you apart and dialing in the ones that matter most to your audience and guests. And then finally, we come up with some type of tagline, slogan. We call it a brand identifier that sets the tone and direction for your brand and gives them that 75-mile-an-hour view. That's the define phase, and really the most important part of the branding phase.
All right. The second D is develop. So you can imagine, somebody's going and they're scrolling through the platform looking for podcasts, and they're scrolling through. In that define phase, we're going to find out what it is that's going to get them to stop on you, right? What is that going to get them to just get them to stop for a second? In this plethora of world with 2 million plus and gaining every day podcasters trying to get into the fray, what's going to get them to stop. But once they stop there, that's not enough, right? They need to know more about who they're listening to and why they're listening to it. This is a develop phase. All right. The guests need to see your online profile first. Okay. Alex is going to talk a lot more about that, how important that is to us. But they also need to see your brand message. That is literally your story. You know, so many podcasters just want to talk about things that are interested in, that they are interested in. And that is a great perspective to start out as a host, right? You're interested in a certain subject. They're going to be interested in the subject. But it's not just enough for the subject many times. People also want to know, why are you interested in that subject? This is where we're developing things about you, the host, that is going to be very important to those audiences and those guests that you're trying to get on for your audience. Do y'all follow what we're saying? So development is something that is very important. We spend a lot of time in this portion when we brand people. We look at 77 different criteria to try to determine what is the best way to take that brand identifier that gets them to stop and then develop that out to get them really interested in why it is that you would want to listen. That's part of the reason why we started this with our experience level and what brought us to you guys today. Okay. We're all made up of different elements that of experience. And I know that Alex and us, we have talked about this in depth about how he even got into podcasting and how he developed what he's going to talk to you with PodMatch here today and what led him to those things. These are the things that really make us interesting as human beings. The story behind the brand is really what holds their attention. And you want that to be something that they unlayer, right, at the right time. So developing that story is very important. But we don't just stop there. When you're trying to figure out how to get them to stop the scroll and land on you, you've got to consider brand imagery, things like your colors, your logo, your brand images, your background images, the photos of you, the photos that are your thumbnails, the things that are going to catch people, like Tanya said earlier, at the 75-mile-an-hour scroll. Those things are very important, and a lot of thought really needs to be put into those. So development of that brand, the second D in the 3D formula, is something that really needs a lot of thought process to make you stand out in this sea of podcasters.
Yep. So the final phase in the 3D process is display. So that means you're taking all of those branding elements that we just created in the development phase, your colors, your logo, the photos of you, background images, your brand messaging, which tells the story and communicates what sets you apart. And you're pulling all those together in terms of graphic design and placement, putting them out there in the world in what we call display, making sure your brand is displayed correctly. And what's the big word, Michael?
Consistently.
I knew it.
I love that word.
He does love that word. It's his favorite thing, consistent. So the beautiful part about that is, and I'll never forget when Michael said this to me one day, he said, you know, probably my favorite part about working with you so far, and this was years ago, he said, that was the first time we said, okay, we need to send out a postcard. And he said, I realized that I had literally everything I needed in one place to send out that postcard. Very compelling look, very different. Nothing was missing. And that's when he really, truly realized, like, wow, this makes marketing so much easier too. And you're about to see what goes into marketing yourself through the PodMatch platform as well when Alex takes over. But I won't go any more about this, guys. That's really what it is. Except to say, you know, what you're looking at right now is a snapshot of what folders are inside of our press kit. So as a podcast guest, because we not only have our own podcast, but we're guests on other people's podcasts as well, you want to have a press kit put together, ready to send out once you have been accepted as a guest. Those are the folders of some of the things inside of our own press kit. And then this,
I can't tell you. Well, let's back up.
Okay.
I want to say something about this. I can't tell you how important this is. And it really blew our mind when we first started our podcast. We would go and we would beg to be guests on somebody else's podcast, and we would try to do all the research that we possibly could about that. Alex is going to tell you how that's become a lot easier thanks to him. But we were out there digging, trying to be, and it blew our mind that podcasters who had just hundreds of thousands of downloads, and they didn't even know what a press kit was. Like they did not have this portion of their brand put together yet. That maybe they had started their podcast and it just took off, and they just got all these downloads, got all these listeners, saw this great success, had a great like subject matter that they wanted to talk to, but they didn't have anything put together. And now we live in a world where it's moving so fast. You got to get this put together, because you're always wanting to extend your audience, right? And your listenership. And the best way to do that is have every bit of that put together in your press kit, especially when you're asking to be a guest on somebody else's podcast. Very, very, very important. I learned the press kit thing from her about 8 years ago. One of the greatest things ever.
Well, here's why. Here's this next slide will show you why you need all that stuff, right? But that stuff is what you send out after you've secured it, right? And it's also a lot of the materials you need to put into your profile. These are the things that you need for your PodMatch profile. Alex is going to walk you through these and show you these, but just look at that. Think about those things. Do you know those things already? Do you have your story together? Do you have something compelling that gets people to want to be a guest or want to listen to your podcast? So Alex is going to walk you through those now. And Alex, we'll just hand it over to you.
So I just took a lot of notes, you both should know. Like I've heard you both talk before, but I just took a lot of notes again. And I'm not going to comment on everything that I want to, because it would take up all of my time if I do that. But the one thing I want to mention real quick is the thing I respect the most about both of you, Tanya and Michael, is that you both give more than you take. Like you're so helpful to some people to really figure out how to do all this, because so many of us are lost, myself included at times. But you give more than you take. And I just think if the world had more people like that in it, it'd be a really different place, wouldn't it? If there was more people like that. But so I appreciate both of you for what you all do, and just sharing already this valuable information is just really cool. And one more thing I mentioned, you all mentioned the importance of like having pictures and stuff like that. My team, most of the time they sit less than 30 feet away from me. We're not like talking all day, but the one who actually handles like all of our social media graphics, when I had you guys on my show, and you guys sent over the pictures and stuff that we could use for promotional, she goes, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love this. Alex, look at these pictures." And that's the only time she's done that in like 160 plus episodes, because of the way that you guys had your pictures done. She goes, "Oh, this is easy. Can you tell all of your guests to do this?" And obviously I can't do that. That'd be inappropriate. But that's the only time ever. So you guys do some really creative work that other people aren't doing. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. But I just appreciate both of you, and thanks again for the platform here. So I want to make sure that this is clear to everyone who's attending right now, or they're watching the replay whenever you're seeing this. It's so important that you get the branding side of this right before you start. A lot of people think that they want to go ahead and just launch everything. They'll figure that stuff out later. And there's something to be said for starting before you're ready, right? Before it's perfect. But you really need to start with that, or you're going to start with no course. It's literally like getting in a car and saying, I'm going somewhere. And you just start driving. Like you don't know if you don't have a map, you don't know where the destination is, and you're just going to be mindlessly going off into oblivion, right? Like, and that's not the right way to start a podcast. And I mention that because although Michael and Tanya, we've been talking about how many shows there are, you all might not realize this, but there's been over 4 million podcasts have been started. The problem is that 90% of people stop before they reach 1 year. So 90% of people who start a podcast stop before reaching 1 year. And the main reason is they don't have a plan. They don't know where they're going. They haven't really figured all the things out that we're talking about today. By knowing this stuff up front and using some tools that'll help you keep organized, it's a really great way for you to ensure success, that you're going to make it past that 1 year mark, which to me is what I'm passionate about, is helping podcasters do that. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that like clarity is key in success in podcasting. Without a vision, people perish is something I also believe. Unspecific goals lead to unspecific results. You've got to have this stuff figured out first. So step one for me is working with Michael and Tanya, because that's really going to help set you up for success here. So I want to jump into like what I do a little bit here. And there's 2 programs I'm going to share with you, and it's PodMatch is one of them, and Podcast SOP is the other. Both these were designed and created specifically to solve a need we saw in podcasting, which was that people were having trouble getting on show. They're having trouble finding guests for their show. Like, couldn't find people. They're going through social media, spending a ton of time doing that. And the flip side, keeping their show organized is really a tough thing. So that's what I want to jump into today. And the whole idea here is, so many of us, we store like these ideas in our head for like who our guests are going to be and for how we're going to keep our show organized. And David Allen is someone I really respect. He has a book called Getting Things Done, the GTD methodology. And he says, your brain is for having ideas, not for storing them. Your brain is for having ideas, not for storing them. And so many podcasters fail because of the stress that comes along with podcasting, because they're like, oh, there's those 10 people I've been trying to reach out to. I need to go follow up with them. And oh my gosh, did I edit that episode? Did I post it on social media? I can't remember where I'm at, what I did. So what I'm going to share with you today is going to help you with those things. And Tanya, I think you have to actually enable me to share my... There we go. Okay.
There you go.
So first and foremost, I'm talking about PodMatch. This is a system we created basically like an online dating style app, for lack of a better term, that's automatically going to connect ideal guests and hosts together for podcast interviews. So if you register as a host, which by the way, if you go through BrandFace, I will bypass something for you. Make sure you use their affiliate link as well. It'll get you a free account. But if you're a brand new host, it won't let you register until you reach a certain point, but I can easily bypass that. So if you go through them, let me know, and I can get you on from day one. So if you want to start day one finding guests, make sure you talk to Tanya and Michael, and I can help set that up through them. But basically what I'm showing you here, this is just a quick little walkthrough of what PodMatch is and how it works. So this, first and foremost, is the dashboard. I'll talk about how it keeps organized. You can see kind of in the middle of the screen, it says upcoming interviews. These are interviews that I've already scheduled that are on my calendar here, and also on my Google Calendar as well, where I can just see what's coming up. Below that, I have estimated releases. I haven't been on a podcast in a little bit. I've been on vacation for a while, so I have no upcoming releases, which means I need to get on some more shows, right? Or find some more guests for my show, both those things. And this is basically your analytics. This is going to show you everything and help you keep organized. From there, the next thing that I'm going to show you here is actually the explore page. So if you want to look for somebody specific, like you're like, you know what? I have a really specific idea for a guest that I'm looking for. Maybe I would never match with them. Let me just search the database. You can do that straight through this explore page. And then from there, the next thing is messages. So after you've matched with somebody, which I'll show you in a minute, I'm kind of saving the best for last here, but you can start messaging back and forth with people. For privacy's sake, I didn't click on any messages, but it looks very similar to maybe how Facebook or Messenger works. Basically, you can just chat back and forth. From here, you can not only chat back and forth, you can also schedule the interview, so you have access to each other's calendars. Ideally, what we wanted to do is create something so you wouldn't have to exchange an email if you didn't want to. Again, that simplifies the whole process. That's the idea of it. So basically, you can message back and forth. As a podcast host, guests can reach out to you, or you can reach out to guests. Either way, you can see your matches. Somebody said they love PodMatch. Thank you, whoever that was. I can't see a name, but thank you. So what I'm going to show you here, well, you know what? How I'll go here because you guys can see me do this live. I'm going to click on my matches, which I have a admin account, so it's a little bit slower, but it should still show you what I want to show you. Anyone else would have a different experience on this. Okay, so this is my next potential guest match. So I can see a bunch of stuff about this person, which I'm going to skip for now. I'll dive in that in a minute. But there's my different options. So I can message this person, which I can ask them if they'd like to match because they have to confirm it. If I'm just maybe not now, I can hit maybe later and I'll bring it back later. If I know it's not a good fit, I can hit pass and I just won't see them again. Or if I had them on my podcast maybe years ago before I had PodMatch or before PodMatch was even a thing, I can just mark it as previously interviewed. Or if I want to have someone on my team look into it, I can pin them and add a little note for somebody else later. So that's kind of how the matching actually works in PodMatch. And everything, again, goes off these kind of four main things here: our dashboard, our matches, explore, and messages. And now what I want to do is dive into this a little bit. Tanya, Michael, you okay with that? Do you have anything to add before I jump into explaining it a little bit?
No, we're right on board with you.
Yep, people are loving it, though.
Yep.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it. Good stuff. We've worked super hard to make this great for people, so I'm very happy to hear that. So what I want to share here, this screen, this is actually, you might recognize the people in that picture. It's a little small on my screen at least, but that's Tanya and Michael right there. This is their show. So what I want to do is actually walk you through each section of this, and we'll just go one at a time. First off, you'll see the podcast description up at the top, and on the left side there, you also see their logo as well. They gave you a link to it as well. That's very helpful. You can see these things, and those are actually pulled straight from their podcasting hosting provider. So those are not things that you can change on PodMatch. It just mirrors whatever you've put on all the directories. It all comes from one place, which again is your hosting provider. But it's so important that you get your description right and that you get your branding. It's just called cover art in podcasting, that you actually get that done correctly. And I'm telling you, it will separate you from other podcasters if you work with someone like Michael and Tanya that can show you exactly what it is that you need. One thing I mentioned about the podcast description, I really like how short you all made the description. And here's why. People who listen to podcasts like to listen to podcasts. They're there because they want to listen, not because they want to read. And I've seen some podcast descriptions that, it is a book. And I always wonder, I'm like, has anyone ever read this? Because I want to listen to the show. I don't want to read about the show. Like, that's why I'm listening to a podcast, not reading their blog. Anyway, I digress with that. So those things are kind of just mirrored directly on PodMatch. The next thing that you'll notice there, let me go back over to this screen here. Sorry. Here we go. is the actual learn more about this podcast. Having a website is super important. If it's like a simple WordPress website, having something you can send people to that are potential guests to look at is really helpful. Your listening link can be whatever. And then all your social links. You don't necessarily need all of the social media links, but have some sort of social presence is so important in today's world, because the actual hosts themselves, the guests themselves, they want to know that you're going to be sharing about it, that they'll have the option to see it on social media themselves, to tag some of their friends in it, things like that. So that's really helpful if you can set that type of thing up. And moving right along here is what you need to know. This is the actual flow of your podcast. This is where having the right branding and the right positioning for yourself is so important, because this is what the guest needs to know about the show. So it explains it to them, explains the flow. It sets a real expectation in their mind as, okay, is this really the right kind of podcast I want to be in? And then they're not going to show up thinking it's something other than what it is, right? They actually know what it is. And it's so important to have that. And the next thing is actually about the audience itself. So this is who the guests are talking to. Really important to really clarify this as well, because if it's just general, I'm telling you, like, we don't live in the age where that can work anymore for podcasting. Sure, the old days, like back even when I started, you could be very general and do fairly well. Now there are so many podcasts coming up every day. You have to be specific. You have to be focused. You have to be for a very personal audience that you say, that is who I'm after. You have to create an avatar. It is just so important to do. And you want to make sure that when a potential guest reads this, they can read something about your audience and know exactly who they're talking to. And when they do that, guess what? Your audience will show back up time and time again, because they feel like they are actually being served. So it's really important. And then the last thing here is the ideal guest criteria, which is, I think, probably it's all helpful, but this is a very helpful part where you can actually tell the guest who you're looking for. And we added some tags as well, because some people will skip all the text and we'll just read the tags. So we want to make sure that it worked really well for people to be able to take a look at, to say, okay, yeah, this is me. This describes me. Now, if you're saying, okay, Alex, this looks cool, I don't want to use PodMatch, perfectly fine. Don't use PodMatch, but you still need to answer all these questions. And I'm telling you, if you don't, your full-time job as a podcaster will be to answer these questions and type that up every single time. You have to have a page somewhere that has all this stuff, so when someone asks or they want to know what you do, you can send them to it. And also, even if they don't ask for it, you still want them to see it, right? You don't want someone coming on your show who has no idea who they're talking to. That's a total waste of your time and your audience's time, and honestly, your guest time as well. So those are that's everything that we do here with PodMatch. Tanya and Michael, before I move into podcast SOP, I want to give you all a chance to jump in if you'd like to.
I would, yes, because we've been using PodMatch for several months now, and every single day we get multiple guests that reach out to us through the platform and want to be on our show every day. So that puts you as the authority, as the podcaster, in a better position, because literally you can pick the very best guests for your show.
Yes.
And that's really important to us, because our show is about be bold branding. And we want to talk to people who have bold brands, who have a compelling story to tell, and tell how their personal brand affected the growth of their business. So that's pretty dialed in, right? And that matters to us. And we don't take them all. Some are not a fit. Most, however, are a pretty good fit. And we've had some amazing guests on our program. So I just want to say hats off to you. When we found PodMatch, it was like Christmas, man.
It was.
It was
because
like
we used to
Christmas.
have to hack. I mean, we literally had somebody in the office doing research, looking for podcasts, and like sending out letters, making phone calls, trying to get on and get guests and get on as guests. And when we found PodMatch, we were like, oh.
We found a new best friend.
I'm telling you.
That's
and
funny.
we didn't have to fire that staff member. We just put him on something else.
That's great. Hey, are you all able to put us back on screen real quick? I was going to mention some on that before we switch over, and then I'll jump back into.
Yeah, absolutely.
That way people can see our faces instead of. There we go. Look at that. We have great looking faces, all of us. So let's be on screen. No, I appreciate you saying that though, and like it goes back to what I said earlier. Like, we created this software solution and the next one I'll talk about because we wanted to help people that are getting into podcasting. Like my goal in podcasting is to help 11% of people make it to the first year, not 10%. Like, can we just help 1% more people? And I actually think that the branding side actually probably helps more than that, because it actually gives them a direction, a purpose for what they're doing type of thing, right? Like, it's really important. But that's why we designed that, because for the first 6 months of my podcast, I just went to LinkedIn and I probably sent 200 messages for every one response. And then half the time I would read it and I'd regret sending them a message in the first place because I'm like, it's not really a good fit. I just got desperate, right? Like, anyway, so that's the whole thing we sought out to do is like, can we actually get the right people in front of each other? Like, can we get the like-minded people together? So, I mean, I appreciate you all using it and being a member, but it's what we set out to do. So I just love to hear that it works. So thank you for that.
Yes.
You bet.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
You know, and I wanted to say, piggybacking on what you said, you know, there is sometimes that it would blow your mind, not yours, Alex, but a lot of people, like you'd get somebody on the, and you'd be ready for the podcast. They'd be like, what are we talking about? Who are we talking to?
Who are we talking to?
I mean, I can't tell you the times we were on people's podcasts and like 1 minute before we were supposed to go, they're like, what do y'all do? Like, what question?
See, again, that's why, even if you don't use PodMatch, even if you don't have PodMatch, you have to have all that stuff together because you don't want guests coming on saying that. Like, and as a host, you've got to do your research. So PodMatch makes it easy because I just showed you what your guests can see. You see the same thing, like I showed you initially, like with a guest profile. You can see kind of their same information to figure out if they're a right fit. It works on both sides. And again, for me, on PodMatch, off PodMatch, if someone doesn't have all their stuff together, then I don't even consider it. And I'm not trying to be mean, but like I've got to know that they're right for my audience because I want to grow my podcast and I want to stay consistent with this. The only way I can do that is to make sure I'm bringing on people that they want to hear. I can't know that if you won't tell me, if you don't have it organized. So
exactly.
Anyway, back to it. We can go back to the slide now. Okay, so podcast SOP is the next thing to talk about. Actually, I love PodMatch, but being an organized person, I'm more excited about podcast SOP, if that's okay for me to say. It's brand new. It's kind of like my baby right now. Like we just launched 3-4 weeks ago or something like that. And the whole idea is, think about this. When someone starts a podcast, they're already overwhelmed, right? And then people say, hey, you need to get organized because you're using sticky notes, you're using whiteboards, you're trying to just remember everything, which, like I said earlier, it's just not a good idea. And people are like, hey, go to asana.com, go to Trello.com, go to Monday.com, and use these project management systems. That's great if someone has prior experience. But here's the thing. If I don't, and I'm already stressed about a podcast, and now you're telling me to go learn this system that can do 24,000 different things.
Right.
Like now I'm like, why am I even doing this? Like now I got to learn all this as well. So for me, I just saw people doing that. And I talked to about 1,000 podcasters who stopped podcasting. And of course, monetization is a big thing for people. But aside from that, the next biggest thing I heard was it's always so stressful. Like I just can't keep it all organized. And I'd be like, well, did you use Trello? Did you use Asana? And they're always like, no, it's too hard to figure out. And I was already trying to learn my podcast. So it just confirmed what I was thinking. So what we designed here is project management software specifically for podcasters. It helps you with your episode releases, and that is all. It does not do anything else. And I am proud to say that. Like, that's what we designed it to do. So I'm going to give you a quick little walkthrough of everybody to see if this is something you might be interested in. And podcastsop.com, it has a free 45-day trial, no credit card required or anything, so you can see if you really like it. This is just the dashboard, which shows since I've started, I've had 41 episodes that are complete. They're done. They're published. I have 10 episodes that are in work. And look at me ahead of myself here. I have no past due tasks. So I'm all caught up on things that are related to me. And what I can actually do, I'll show you what this looks like now, is I can click on any of these. I think I actually opened tabs. Oh, no, sorry, I did not. Okay. I can click on any of these episodes. These are all individual episodes that are being released. These are not out yet. And I can see what needs to be done. And this is being populated by a predetermined checklist that I created. So every time, if I jump out of this, I hit add new episode, it literally will ask me what type of episode. And I can say I want this one. Give it a title, give it a release date, and an episode number if I want to. And then when I make it, it falls in line and then puts the due dates on everything. It creates my list of things to do, which is 28 different items I check off every single time. And so this is one that's pending right now with Daniel Pink. And if I say, okay, only my assignments, I just want to see my stuff. Okay, I want to hide things I've already done. Here's all my tasks that I still need to do. And you can see here some of them have comments. It says me and my team. There's multiple people assigned to it. Someone's telling me what I need to do, or I'm telling them what they need to do. Some of them you can upload different files. If you're exchanging files back and forth, you can comment. You can edit the tasks at any time. And that's kind of the way the whole software works. Again, that is what it's set up to do. And I'll show you where that actually... I mentioned the team. You can add team members. So I have my 2 people that have their different permissions of what they can actually do and what I assign them to. I do that through these templates. These are both my templates here for 2 different types of episodes I release. And I can go in and edit the task at any point. And if you're a new podcaster, you're like, I have no idea what to do, we have a template gallery, which I'll just show you. I've opened mine. So mine's on there publicly for anyone who wants it. You can actually use this template. You can modify it yourself, but you can watch like my little video where I explain it all. You can kind of get an idea of some of the things about my show, and you can see each of the things that I have listed there. And if you add it and you're like, I hate this one, like number 12, you can just delete it or change it at any point. But again, the whole idea, it's pretty simple. There's not a lot that it does. It literally just helps you keep up with your episode releases. And it's been really valuable for a lot of people because it's alleviated that stress. It gives them a system, a process to follow, and it's something I'm really excited about. So I'm done with my slides, you two, so that's all I had here. But really important that people understand, even if you're not going to use Podcast SOP, you use something that helps you get a standard operating procedure, that's what SOP stands for, in place for your show so that you can focus on the things that matter. Because here's the thing. Me doing all the things behind the scenes does not develop my brand. Releasing things consistently, as Michael and Tanya already said, is what develops my brand further. So my job is just to make a way so I can be as consistent as I possibly can with everything I'm doing with my show, spending the least time doing that as well. Because if I'm spending 40 hours a week, would be crazy. Sorry, how about 10 hours a week doing like all the behind the scenes stuff and only devoting 1 hour to my actual brand side of things, that's not good. You want to flip that script. The only way you can do that is to get really organized and figure out what works for you and how you're going to do it so that you're not stressed about it so you can have a good front-facing side of your brand. And anyway, that's why we created Podcast SOP, which I think aligns super well with BrandFace and everything you guys do. But again, what I shared at the beginning is the order you do these things in, I'll share that again, is in my mind, you start with working with BrandFace. You have to do that first. You have to establish that. And then you create a podcast SOP, and then you jump into PodMatch after you've got everything organized and ready to go. I think if you do those three things in that order, you'll be set up to be part of the 10% that makes it past their first year and hopefully creates a really great, thriving podcast that's serving a lot of people.
I got to say that SOP is fantastic.
Thank you.
Because it also right off the bat, I noticed that it helps you with scalability too. So like for instance, we'll give you a personal story. We're working on a podcast that is more of entertainment and personal value. It's just something, it's a subject matter that she and I are just passionate about, and we think it's really cool. And so we've been developing the backlog of that, doing the interviews, shooting the podcast and stuff like that. We're not ready for a launch yet, but the SOP really is going to help us with that because we can dedicate a staff member to just follow those directions, right? And you've already done the work that you would have to train somebody else to do, which also takes your time. And, we're busy. We've got other businesses we have to run, and but we don't want to let our podcast fall by the wayside because of that consistency. So that SOP is really incredible because it's so user-friendly. And I love the fact that you can have different permissions in different people. So if you have somebody in the marketing portion of that, and you have other people in the production part of that, because production is something I'm sure you've seen is just elevating. Used to, it was okay that you were just, it was just listening. I mean, you didn't even see anything. Now it's getting into video and it's getting into production of that. And you have those permissions for other people in your staff to be able to work behind the scenes. Now you can just focus on being that host and being that guest even. I think that's fantastic. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Means a lot. Like I said, that's my baby right now. I'm passionate about it. So thank you for not calling my baby ugly or anything like that. I appreciate you, Michael.
Ugly? My goodness. Like, we want to babysit it.
Right.
No, that's fantastic. And it's so new, guys, that we haven't even had time to look into it ourselves, but that'll be the next thing we delve into as well.
It will be. It absolutely
because Michael teed up the ball for me here, but you can spend your life working in your business or working on your business. And working in your business is sending a bunch of emails to a bunch of people and reaching out through LinkedIn, 200 people and getting one return and all of those things.
And the wrong return.
Exactly. It's not just, it's not, one of the sayings that we have is you don't just need people to know you exist. You need the right people to know why you exist. Mm-hmm. That's what branding is all about. And that's what getting that profile correct and actually utilizing the platform is what it's for. Work on the business, not in it, guys. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll leave you guys with this, which is, so now what? Where do we start, right? So if you would like to discuss your brand and get that set up and talk about what sets you apart, go to discussyourbrand.com. And if you want to set up your profile in PodMatch, you've got everything already. You're ready to go. Go straight to PodMatch. And also there is the affiliate link. It doesn't cost you anymore. Disclaimer, we probably make 2 pennies off of it. It's all good. But we also bring you into our family too. And together we'll make sure that you have all the resources you need to be super successful with this. So Alex, you are an angel, and we are so pleased. Oh, wait, Alex, I just shut you off the screen.
Hang
on. Where'd I go? Come on. Where am I?
Remove it.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, you're an angel, and bye. Alex, honestly, we're so honored to not only know you professionally, but consider you our friend. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us, because this 1-2 punch is really, really powerful.
Yeah. And thank you for PodMatch, and thank you now for PodMatch SOP, because we already use one platform religiously. We're going to be using the other, and we encourage everybody listening to do the exact same thing, because he's taken a lot of hard work out of it.
He's nailed it.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope to be able to do more of these with you guys, because I've really enjoyed this. And if I could just add kind of like a final thought here for people that are attending right now, just a little bit of vision about podcasting, like why we podcast. There's something that I always say. I say, seek to be a person of value, not a person of profit. And for me personally, like I'm a follower of Jesus from the Bible, so I believe that you serve and you love people. And I think that with podcasting, you don't need to be a Christian necessarily or anything like that, but you need to have that mindset of I'm here to serve and love other people. Sure, the monetization can be great. The fans that you can get can be great. The audience can be really good. But at the end of the day, you have to do it not for those reasons, but instead to add value to somebody's life. Even if you're a comedian, maybe you're just trying to help people get a little bit more laughs in a day than this tough time that we're in. It's so important that you always maintain that mindset of I'm not doing this to be a person of profit, but to be a person of value and to serve other people. So I just wanted to kind of give that final thought there, because I think it's so important that we all remember that.
Hey, I'm going to trump you with your own words.
Here we go.
Words, right? Alex taught us that, the thing about the podcast community is everybody right now, and hopefully it stays this way, has approached this, and these are Alex's words, from a position of abundance. And I love that. My personal tagline is the Abundant Life Broker. I really love that. And it's true about the podcast community. And so I really encourage everybody, get started, man. Get started on your podcast. You got something to say and people want to hear it.
Yep. There's a purpose behind everything, guys.
Yep.
What is your purpose? And we all 3 of us here believe it is our purpose to help others. It's our purpose to give back. It's our purpose to give more than we receive. And we believe in that very strongly. So we're glad you could join us today. Thank you all so very much. And on your way out, hey, don't forget, continue to leave comments. If you're watching this later on, leave the comments. We'll pay attention. We'll answer every one of those, guys. And we appreciate you. And Alex, we appreciate you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.